I was part of a webinar this morning for the New York Association of Collaborative Professionals, and we were discussing separate property. And in preparing for the webinar, I started to think about the people who drafted the equitable distribution law back in 1980, 45 years ago, and whether they had any idea that we would spend so much time figuring out how to handle separate property, whether someone's entitled to a separate property credit, um, and appreciation and value of separate property. My name's Ken Novenstern, Fredman Baken Novenstern, LLP. And it's just a fascinating concept that this law that went into effect 45 years ago, and it just has so many tentacles. And in the area of separate property, this morning we specifically talked about real property, the home, the vacation home, where separate property claims get special credit or special acknowledgement, and the different cases where one party has the burden of proving that by working directly or indirectly in the marriage, that they contributed to the appreciation and value of a home that was solely titled in their spouse's name, situations where the person who owns title to the property at the time of the marriage has to, and then during the marriage transfers it into joint names, has the burden of demonstrating their entitlement to a separate property credit. And that's with real property, where there's a special recognition of a right to separate property credits. Then you get into areas like retirement assets, where people brought retirement accounts into the marriage, where there is a recognition. It's a little bit more direct, because with retirement accounts, you actually keep those in your individual name. You can't transfer a retirement account into joint names. And then you get into situations with bank accounts where people mix separate property from prior to the marriage with income that they've earned during the marriage. And with bank accounts, you really don't get that same kind of recognition as with real property, or that protection with retirement accounts. So it's much more difficult to prove a separate property claim with respect to things like bank or brokerage accounts. So separate property claims occupy a significant amount of the attorney's time or your financial professional that you retain to assist you in your attorney. And they, the nature of the claim really depends on the nature of the asset in most instances. So if you have separate property claims, money that you brought into the marriage, gifts, inheritances, personal injury settlements, then please give me a call. We could discuss the implications with regard to those items of separate property for purposes of your divorce and this equitable distribution law that's now been around for 45 years. Take care.